In this video I'm going to tell you 5 good things and 5 bad things about the MSC cruise ship Virtuosa, so let's get straight into it. Ahoy there, I'm Captain Chris. I'm not a real captain, but I'm here to give you the heads up about the MSC ship Virtuosa, so that you'll know what to expect if you're planning a trip on Virtuosa anytime soon. And this information could also be useful for Virtuosa's sister ships Meraviglia, Bellisima, Grandiosa and Euribia, but it's Virtuosa I'm talking about specifically. And stay tuned until the end, because I've got some bonus information coming up about something that gets some people very hot under the collar. So we'll start with what's good, and the first thing that hits you as you board Virtuosa is just how shiny and beautiful it is. The grand atrium is mirrored and smart and has a really sparkly staircase which wraps around the stage where there's often piano music. There are bars and shops all around on the 3 decks that it covers, and these have nice seating areas that are within earshot of the music. As you might expect from a ship called Virtuosa, there's a musical theme on board and the decks are all named after composers, but the standout feature of this ship is the amazing Galleria Virtuosa. This is almost 100 metres long and it's like a street with shops, bars and restaurants all along, and above it is the incredible LED ceiling which shows all kinds of ever-changing scenes from flowers and fish to cities and dinosaurs. It's impossible to take your eyes off it. You can never take too many photos of it, and it's the thing you'll remember about this ship long after you've forgotten everything else. It's absolutely stunning. Number 2 on this list is the food. Now, we all have different tastes in food, but we thought the food served in the main restaurants was absolutely delicious. If you've paid the Bella or Fantastica fare, you dine in one of the 4 main dining rooms. And the musical theme continues here, as they're called Minuetto, Opera, Symphony and the Blue Danube. They're all huge, they all serve the same menu, and you're allocated a time and table number which is printed on your cruise card. We really enjoyed every single meal we had here, and we usually had our breakfast here too, although at breakfast you're allocated a table each morning on arrival. If you have paid the Aurea fare and you're on what's called the My Choice dining, you have a separate restaurant to eat in which is called Il Campo. And you can also pay the Yacht Club fare, which gives you access to another separate area on board, which has a restaurant, sundeck, lounge and bar, which is exclusively for Yacht Club guests. It's like having a ship within a ship. If the formal dining with waiter service doesn't suit you, you can choose to eat in the buffet instead, and this is a popular choice with lots of passengers, especially those with children. The buffet is huge and impressive. In fact, it's the best cruise ship buffet I've experienced. As you might expect from an Italian cruise line, the pizza and pasta are a speciality. They make 300 kilos of mozzarella on board every day, and there's some really lovely food here, as well as burgers and hot dogs and chips that might be preferred by youngsters who don't want anything too fancy. The desserts are really lovely too, and you can take as much or as little as you want. We loved the buffet and visited every day, usually for lunch, and then we preferred the main restaurants for dinner, but there are plenty of families who eat every meal in the buffet, so do whatever works for you. Number 3 on the list is the evening entertainment. Virtuosa has 2 theatres on board. The Grand Theatre had great shows on every day, including singers, comedians and a violinist. We saw a lot of these shows and thought they were all excellent, and they're repeated 3 times a night, so you can fit them in around your evening meal. At the back of the ship, the Carousel Lounge is another 400-seat venue, and they alternated between 2 shows. There was a charge for this venue, whereas the shows in the Grand Theatre were free, but it was only £9 if you booked in advance, and that included a cocktail, which we thought was a bargain. Besides the theatre shows, Virtuosa has a themed party pretty much every night, where you can dress up in 70s gear or neon colours, and my favourite was when everyone dresses in white, and the music and dancing goes on until pretty late. but dressing up isn't compulsory and everyone we saw seems to be having a great time. If you like things lively, Virtuosa would be a good choice for you, and there were always plenty of people enjoying the atmosphere in the bars and generally having a good time. Now, some people are worried about taking their first cruise because they're worried about the days at sea and think these will drag and they'll be bored. So number 4 on this list is the daytime activities. The crew of Virtuosa organise a constant stream of entertainment and activities to make your sea days fly by. There are high energy things like early morning stretching, aerobics by the pool, group cycling in the gym and yoga, and also gentler pastimes like Sudoku, origami, bingo, piano recitals, and we enjoyed the daily quizzes, although one thing they didn't have were any enrichment talks. There are great kids clubs on board in Do Re Mi Land. There's a teens club with video games and a large sportplex area. This is really impressive with Formula 1 simulator, 4D cinema, virtual reality games, 10-pin bowling, loads of arcade games and a large sports court. Kids will spend hours and hours here if you let them, and although it isn't free, you can buy a pass to use here, which saves you a little bit off the price. My advice to you, if you've never cruised before, is not to worry about the sea days. Embrace them and give as many of the activities a try as you reasonably can. Number 5 on my list is the general good quality of everything on board, but especially the service we received from the crew. Now, people will have different experiences, of course, but we were absolutely delighted and satisfied with pretty much every crew member we encountered on our entire cruise. All the waiting staff were excellent and many of them remembered us by name, despite the huge number of guests on board. The restaurant manager was excellent when we needed to switch to a different meal time one evening, and the entertainment staff deserve a special mention for keeping the activities coming 24/7. We did have a couple of problems with the reception though. A couple of times we asked them to have something brought to our room and it wasn't done. So this brings me neatly on to 5 bad things about Virtuosa. The first thing that annoyed us about this cruise was, well, literally the first thing, embarkation. We've been on a few cruises now, but the queue to board Virtuosa was the biggest and slowest we've ever had. The queue snaked to and fro outside the cruise terminal, and it was quite a chilly morning that day too. Some people then started cutting across the zigzags and getting ahead of passengers who'd already been queuing for nearly an hour, and argued with the port staff who tried to stop them. And when we did get to the front, there didn't really seem to be any particular reason for the long delay. I don't really know what it was, but other cruise lines seem to do it better. My advice would be to dress for the weather on embarkation day. Number 2 on the list goes back to the subject of the food. We loved the food in the main restaurants and we loved the buffet, but unless you're prepared to pay extra for the speciality restaurants, that's it. There are no other free dining options. As I said earlier, if you pay extra for the Aurea fare or the Yacht Club, you do then have one more restaurant at your disposal. But other ships we've been on have had 3 or 4 other restaurants to choose from at no extra cost. But on Virtuosa, you're quite limited. The food was lovely, but included in your fare, it was the main restaurants, the buffet, and that was it. This brings me on to number 3, which is the general busyness of the ship. Virtuosa carries well over 5,000 passengers, so all of the venues get very busy at times. Not only the restaurants, but the entertainment venues and even just the lounges can be packed out, especially in the evenings. My wife and I used to call the afternoon quiz in the Virtuosa lounge the standing up quiz, because we never once got a seat and we did the quiz each day standing up at the back. We had good weather when we were on Virtuosa, so during the daytime lots of people were outside sunbathing, but if the weather was unsuitable for being outside, all of those people would have been inside all day too. You may need to think about how to avoid being left without a seat by booking shows in the theatre and trying to bag a seat in a lounge or bar for the rest of the evening before they get full up. There were times that we felt there wasn't a free seat anywhere on board and headed back to our cabin instead, so if an early night's not for you, you may need to book and plan your entertainment. Number 4 is a small consideration for you about the location of your cabin. The themed party nights that I mentioned earlier were held in the Galleria Virtuosa, which is on deck 6. Our cabin was on deck 9 and we could hear the party music coming up from 3 decks below. It wasn't too loud in our cabin or too intrusive, but I was glad we weren't on the deck below, so if you need silence to sleep, you should choose a slightly higher deck than we did, or take some earplugs. Now, we're nearly at the end now, and don't forget I've got some information coming up at the end about one thing that MSC do that gets some people very angry, so stay tuned for that. Also, could I please ask, if you're finding this video at all useful or interesting, would you please hit the subscribe button and allow notifications? Subscribing doesn't cost you anything, but it means you'll get notified when I post another video, and it lets me know that you've enjoyed this one, so please subscribe. Thank you. So, before the bonus information, number 5 on the list is all about money. The headline price for MSC cruises are usually amongst the lowest you'll find, so you may think this is a good choice for cruising on a budget. The problem is that once you're on board, they find lots of ways to tempt you to part with a little bit more cash. Drinks, for example, if you haven't bought a drinks package, are pretty pricey, with more or less no alcoholic drinks on board costing less than £8. Draft Heineken was £7.50 when we went, but that was for 400 millilitres, which works out to £10.65 a pint. The speciality restaurants, the Butcher's Cut, Cato, the Indochine and Ola tacos were nice, but they were expensive considering that you've already paid for a meal in the main restaurant that you won't be having. Other cruise lines we've been on seem to charge much less for the speciality dining. Then there's the ice cream parlour and chocolate shop to tempt you, and drinks from the robot bartender, which were great fun to watch him make for you, but were more expensive than anywhere and not included in your drinks package, even if you've got one. You could watch a huge selection of films on the TV in your cabin, but they cost £8 each when we went, whereas films were free on our last cruise with P&O. And of course the Sportplex is brilliant, but everything in there comes at an extra charge, and your kids will burn through plenty of cash in there if you let them. You don't have to spend anything at all on an MSC cruise if you only drink the inclusive drinks, only use the main restaurants and the buffet, and don't visit the Sportplex, but you'll need an iron will to resist all the temptations they put in your way. So now to the bonus information I've been promising you, which seems to get some people very agitated. During your cruise on an MSC ship, the company will add £1 to your account without asking you as a donation to the MSC Foundation, which is their environmental conservation charity. Given that Virtuosa carries over 5,000 passengers, their charity does pretty well out of that on every cruise. But some people get really angry that they do it without asking. If you really don't want them to take an extra £1 off you, you can speak to reception and have it cancelled. Although we didn't, we let them have it, but I've heard some people get really angry. I think it's not so much about the amount of money, but the fact that they do it without asking. So now that I've told you what to expect and what your £1 gets spent on, you can have a think about it and decide how you feel before you leave home. Well, that's all for this time, so until next time, thanks for watching.